this morning. What will that response look like?
Hey guys, this is Tom at Tom Nation Politics. How's everybody? Am I live on Facebook? Dear, I do declare. I hope everybody had a good President's Day. President's Day. In the first free republic, how did they come up with a president in the first place? How do you think?
Today in Philadelphia, SneakerCon. It's a convention to show off what's new and what's hot in the sneaker world. But today, in a twist, former President Donald Trump showed up. NBC 10 political reporter Lauren Make joins us in the newsroom. Lauren, you were there as well. Tell us more.
Yeah, Tracy, this was not your typical campaign stop. It was part political stop, part sales stop. And I'm not talking about selling a candidate. The former president introduced a new line of sneakers today at this sneaker-themed event. He held up gold sneakers in front of a screen that showed a web address for Trump sneakers. On that site, sneakers were selling for $199 to $399, and there was also Trump-themed cologne for sale. Now, Trump today, talking about the sneaker line, said he had wanted to do this for years. This does come today, the day after a judge issued a more than $350 million judgment against the former president in a civil fraud trial. Now, Trump only spoke today for about 5 minutes or so, much shorter than we usually see. Here's part of what he told the crowd and what I heard from people there.
What's the most important thing? To go out and vote, right?
The president saying we shall respond. Iran this morning denying any involvement in the deadly attack on that military outpost. But U.S. officials are blaming Iran-backed militants and say the drone appeared to have been launched from Syria. President Biden is facing pressure from some Republicans. Back, Senator Lindsey Graham telling, quote, hit Iran now, hit them hard. And Senator John Cornyn urging President Biden to target
The White House has been dreading this exact thing for several months now as the U.S. tries to prevent the war from Gaza from spilling into an even wider regional conflict. What President Biden decides to do here will be hugely consequential, and the situation is complicated by ongoing hostage negotiations with Hamas to release captives. CNN's Arlette Saenz leads us off this morning from the White House. Arlette, this incident is without question a significant escalation. The president has vowed to respond. Do we have any sense of when or what that response might look like?
Well, not yet, Phil, and that's really the big question facing the White House this morning. President Biden yesterday called this attack on those U.S. forces despicable and wholly unjust, and now he and his team are working towards deciding how exactly the U.S. will respond. In a statement mourning the death of those 3 U.S. service members, the president said, quote, we will hold all those responsible to account at a time and in a manner of our choosing. Now, the president so far has said that it was Iran-backed militant groups based in Syria and Iraq that were responsible for this attack. But the U.S. is still working to determine which specific group carried out this attack on U.S. forces. Overnight, Iran denied any involvement or responsibility for this attack, according to Iran's state news agency. And it really speaks to one of the challenges facing President Biden going forward, as he and his team have really tried to prevent this conflict from widening into an even broader conflict in the Middle East. Now, while more than 100, while U.S. and coalition forces have been attacked more than 150 times since the October 7th attack, this is the first incident that marked and included the deaths of U.S. service members, which is really raising the stakes for President Biden as he is charting the course of action.
We have to go out and vote. We got to get young people out to vote. And you're going to vote, and we're going to turn this thing around. This country's not doing so well. We're going to turn this country around fast. We're going to turn it around fast. And we're going to remember the young people, and we're going to remember SneakerCon. You know that. We're going to remember the young people especially that wear sneakers, right?
Former President Donald Trump showing up here. What do you think about that?
I love it. I love he's trying to get in touch with the youth. He's trying to get some young voters. I personally support him.
You guys voted in the 2020 election?
Yes.
Who did you vote for?
I actually voted for Donald Trump in the 2020 election.
You did. So he could get you back again.
He could.
Former President Trump came here to talk to folks. What do you think about the fact that he came here to talk to folks here today?
Honestly, I think it was a waste of time.
Why?
This is not a political event, and this is not a political arena. And sometimes folks get caught up in the moment and don't understand the bigger picture.
Must have been a very interesting decision to make. The founding fathers had to do. Who knows? Maybe they wanted a king. Well, they had a king before. They called him a tyrant. It's supposed to be a free country, though.
Oval Office, Inauguration Day, Rose Garden signings, and Secret Service agents with dark sunglasses and cool wrist radios. For
Guarding
a moment,
Joe Biden.
Get all of it. Toss out everything you know about the president. Now, start over. What would you do if you had to invent the president? That was the question facing the 55 men who got together in secret to draw up the plans for a new American government in the summer of 1787 in Philadelphia, in the same place where the Declaration of Independence had been written 11 years earlier. Declaring
A Declaration of Independence.
I think, my mother
There comes a time when we have to dissolve the political bands that once united us. And before God and humanity, declare an independence. The list of grievances that they declared to a tyrant. Guys, this is Tommy with Tommy Issue Politics. Free-thinking, innovative, open-minded, new progressive media. We want to tell you, I hope you had a great President's Day. I hope you thought about not this president or the presidential election. I hope you thought about the foundations and workings of a republic. First free republic, not ruled by a monarch. Was it supposed to be a democracy? No. Was it supposed to be a perfect utopian dream? It wasn't. It was just supposed to give us the chance to live a destiny that we alone could manifest with God-given inalienable rights declared under natural law: life, liberty, happiness. Those were the foundational principles that classical Lockean liberalism and conservative state power bootlickeriness was founded. And the two wings of the bird, behold, they were the common ideas, the common traditions that bind us, that unite us as one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. So many years later, but not so many years later, guys, take a look at ourselves and our neoliberal world order. I hope President's Day was a day that you just stopped and reflected where it all began. And there was many a contentious decision to make. Our decisions as Americans, as contentious as they were in the past, are choices that we must choose for our country, for our brothers and sisters, for our posterity, for our nation. The choice is ours.
Independence had been risky business, demanding ferocious courage that put lives and fortunes in jeopardy. But inventing a new government was no field day either, especially when it's summer and you're in scratchy suits and the windows are closed because you don't want anybody to hear what you are saying, and the air conditioning doesn't work because it won't be invented for nearly 200 years. And when you don't agree on things, it gets even hotter. For the framers, the question they argued over most while writing the Constitution and creating 3 branches of government had to do with the executive department. 1 man or 3 to do the job. How long should he serve? What would he really do? Who would pick him? How to get rid of him if he's doing a bad job or he's a crook. And of course, they all meant him, and he would be a white man.
And I think for someone who's running for president, they need to be a little more serious about what the issues are and what it is that we're trying to accomplish.
The idea of a woman, or an African American, for instance, holding this high office was not a glimmer in their eyes. But the framers knew they needed someone who could take charge, especially in a crisis like an invasion or a rebellion or negotiating treaties. Congress was not very good at making such important decisions without debates and delays. But the framers thought America needed a man who was decisive and could act quickly. They called it energy and dispatch. One thing they were dead set against: there would be no king. They had fought a war against a country with a monarch and were afraid that one man with unchecked powers in charge of an army could take over the country. Instead, they settled on a president and laid out his powers in Article 2 of the Constitution.
U.S. President Joe Biden has signed an executive order imposing sanctions on 4 Israeli settlers for attacking Palestinians in the occupied West Bank.
Hey guys, this is Tommy with
Violence
Tommy
against
Nation Politics.
Palestinians by Israeli
How's everyone
soldiers
doing
on
today?
settlers in the West Bank has increased sharply.
The following pre-recorded political program is sponsored by TV for Goldwater Miller on behalf of Barry Goldwater, Republican candidate for President of the United States. Ladies and gentlemen, we take pride in presenting a thoughtful address by Ronald Reagan. Mr. Reagan.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you and good evening. The sponsor has been identified, but unlike most television programs, the performer hasn't been provided with a script. As a matter of fact, I have been permitted to choose my own words and discuss my own ideas regarding the choice that we face in the next few weeks. I have spent most of my life as a Democrat. I recently have seen fit to follow another course. I believe that the issues confronting us cross party lines. Now, one side in this campaign has been telling us that the issues of this election are the maintenance of peace and prosperity. The line has been used, we've never had it so good. But I have an uncomfortable feeling that this prosperity isn't something on which we can base our hopes for the future. No nation in history has ever survived a tax burden that reached 1/3 of its national income. Today, 37 cents out of every dollar earned in this country is the tax collector's share. And yet our government continues to spend $17 million a day more than the government takes in. We haven't balanced our budget 28 out of the last 34 years. We've raised our debt limit 3 times in the last 12 months. And now our national debt is 1.5 times bigger than all the combined debts of all the nations of the world. We have $15 billion in gold in our treasury. We don't own an ounce. Foreign dollar claims are $27.3 billion. And we've just had announced that the dollar of 1939 will now purchase 45 cents in its total value. As for the peace that we would preserve, I wonder who among us would like to approach the wife or mother whose husband or son has died in South Vietnam and ask them if they think this is a peace that should be maintained indefinitely. Do they mean peace, or do they mean we just want to be left in peace? There can be no real peace while one American is dying someplace in the world for the rest of us. We're at war with the most dangerous enemy that has ever faced mankind in his long climb from the swamp to the stars. And it's been said if we lose that war, and in so doing lose this way of freedom of ours, history will record with the greatest astonishment that those who had the most to lose did the least to prevent its happening. Well, I think it's time we ask ourselves if we still know the freedoms that were intended for us by the founding fathers. Not too long ago, 2 friends of mine were talking to a Cuban refugee, a businessman who had escaped from Castro. And in the midst of his story, one of my friends turned to the other and said, "We don't know how lucky we are." And the Cuban stopped and said, "How lucky you are. I had some place to escape to." And in that sentence, he told us the entire story. If we lose freedom here, there's no place to escape to. This is the last stand on earth. And this idea that government is beholden to the people, that it has no other source of power except the sovereign people, is still the newest and the most unique idea in all the long history of man's relation to man. This is the issue of this election. Whether we believe in our capacity for self-government or whether we abandon the American Revolution and confess that a little intellectual elite in a far distant capital can plan our lives for us better than we can plan them ourselves. You and I are told increasingly we have to choose between a left or right. Well, I'd like to suggest there is no such thing as a left or right. There's only an up or down. Man's old age dream, the ultimate in individual freedom consistent with law and order, or down to the ant heap of totalitarianism. And regardless of their sincerity, their humanitarian motives, those who would trade our freedom for security have embarked on this downward course. In this vote harvesting time, they use terms like the Great Society, or as we were told a few days ago by the President, we must accept a greater government activity in the affairs of the people. But they've been a little more explicit in the past, and among themselves, and all of the things I now will quote have appeared in print. These are not Republican accusations. For example, they have voices that say the Cold War will end through our acceptance of a not undemocratic socialism. Another voice says the profit motive has become outmoded. It must be replaced by the incentives of the welfare state. Or our traditional system of individual freedom is incapable of solving the complex problems of the 20th century. Senator Fulbright has said at Stanford University that the Constitution is outmoded. He referred to the President as our moral teacher and our leader. And he says he is hobbled in his task by the restrictions of power imposed on him by this antiquated document. He must be freed so that he can do for us what he knows is best. And Senator Clark of Pennsylvania, another articulate spokesman, defines liberalism as meeting the material needs of the masses through the full power of centralized government. Well, I, for one, resent it when a representative of the people refers to you and me, the free men and women of this country, as the masses. This is a term we haven't applied to ourselves in America. But beyond that, the full power of centralized government, this was the very thing the Founding Fathers sought to minimize. They knew that governments don't control things. A government can't control the economy without controlling people. And they know when a government sets out to do that, it must use force and coercion to achieve its purpose.
Force and coercion to achieve its purpose. Quote Ronald Reagan in that speech, A Time for Choosing. Those who have the most to lose did the least to prevent it. I think those are the masses. Those people that the World Economic and elite, Ivy League, Ivory Tower fact checkers, I think they're the people that they're referring to. The masses. The masses I define as those people with the most to lose that did the least to try to lose it, get it lost from. Anyway, guys, it's not every day I quote Ronald Reagan. He was a monster. As you can see earlier in that speech, he was a warmonger too. He loved war. He loved killing brown people just as much as every American president. It was a very interesting thing to choose a president. Why not just 3 judges? Why not like a jury? Definitely not a king. They fought a war against a king. Yet still, we hear the same old propaganda slogans coming hither to us. Our side is the savior of democracy. I ask that side, when was America a democracy? The other side says, make America great again. I ask that side, like back during segregation. In either case, guys, we got to be free-thinking, innovative, open-minded to get the new, truthful insight. The only insight that you could possibly get from you. From your truth. Your truth, guys, might just be the truth. The whole truth and nothing but the truth. One thing's for sure.
not the legislature. That would lead to cabal and factions. Got it. Electors, wise, informed men who had time to make a good decision. And if they didn't produce a winner, then the decision would go to one of the other branches of government, the Congress. The House of Representatives would step in and make the choice, which they did in 1801 and 1825. In the long, hot summer of 1787, compromises were made to invent the presidency, like counting slaves as 3/5 of a person, giving the president command of the army but Congress the power to declare war, and unlimited 4-year terms. Since then, some of those compromises have been amended, and the men in office have sometimes been too strong or too weak. But you could start from scratch. How would you redesign the Oval Office?
Hey guys, this is Tommy with Tommy Nation Politics. How's everyone doing today? Tommy Nation Politics. Well, my friends, this Tuesday's guest, I'll be talking to him in a bit. He was a little, we had a scheduling issues. He's a prominent national pollster named Doug Kaplan, a political strategist, professionally renowned for unbiased analysis and adaptive insight, which encompasses diverse audiences, women, men, they, thems, etc. As 2016 pollster for Breitbart and One America News, his firm uniquely predicted the unconventional moment that was the Trump victory. His actions and outcomes kind of reemerging. As much as the Democrats are pushing Biden as bigger threat they make, the more popular he becomes. I'm going to talk to Doug about that. I want to get clear insight on the various topics, such as those that are going on in the political landscape. Also, Nikki Haley's ascent. What's that about? Her dynamic rhetoric. Or lack thereof. Methinks it's... Oh, well, guys. Mind to the man behind the curtain. Those who have the most to lose, least to prevent it happening. As Ronald Reagan. Choosing, guys. History repeating itself. A time for choosing. It was coherent philosophy that in subtle ways gave the main ideology, conservatism, do what conservatism and liberalism represented. The attacks on liberty, whereas conservatives would always talk individual liberty and self-government. They use term as the Great Society because that was a way for to become a big part of a social influence in which the founding fathers never meant to happen. Over the years of from the power of the people, we've increasingly had to choose. There's only up or down. There's only security at the cost of liberty. There is not one party rule without the threat of fascism and totalitarianism. That, my friends, was the very thing we rebelled from in the first place. And as we talk about these two choices, I can't stop thinking about how the represented true powerful party of democracy, the good guys, they have the capacity for giving us the security that we need for just our cost of liberty. Economically, spiritually better? Or are these all illusions? Is the White House in and of itself an illusion? It was just invented. And we can always reinvent it. It's so interesting how, when you think about this, because I didn't think about Joe Biden or Donald Trump or the presidential election during this President's Day. I thought about how we got here, how we decided to attempt an experiment where a free republic was governed by not one monarch, but a collective body of informed people that took decisions seriously about the country and ushered the posterity to do likewise. It's our time to make very hard, critical choices. And not just not the presidential election at all. Those are not the choices that are hard, that are critical, that are existential. These campaigns, these propaganda campaigns during elections, they really kind of hurt a little bit. Like, all in all, yes, it's a good competition, and yes, there's a race, and there's a victory. It's very exciting, but on the other hand, people that lack the historical context of our country, they fail to see the nuance of the tiny differences that separate us from every other country and that gave us the prosperity that we had maintained for hundreds of years, such as manifest destiny, such as states' rights, such as amendments to the Constitution, such as arguments put in a Supreme Court that could check the power of the executive and legislative branches, the separation of powers, the sovereignty of a united nation. These are all very delicate balances of power that these Democrats and Republicans have run rampant over. And what's more is that they failed to even obtain whatever their agenda had made them attain. It wasn't restoring the soul of America. It was probably getting Jamie Dimon on the Forbes 100 list the 60th time. I don't know what Joe Biden's real agenda was, but all I can tell you is, by all metrics, by all bounds and measures, Joe Biden has failed in his agenda. He's failed to restore the soul of America. He's failed the American people. He's failed to protect them from threats of foreign and domestic. He's failed to give us the prosperity and promote the general fair. He's failed to secure the blessings of liberty to ourselves and our posterity. He's failed, and he is unfit to be president. I just want to remind you guys that this is really what's kicked off the 2024 election. It was a last-ditch attempt from a dementia-riddled old man and a racist party, the crumbling in power to hold on and maintain power by any means necessary. Any means necessary.
President Biden's approval rating hitting a new all-time low. Yahoo Finance senior columnist Rick Newman is here. Rick, what gives? Inflation is decelerating. Aren't things supposed to be better?
How low can it go? I'm actually surprised. This poll shows 34% approval rating for President Biden. In the aggregate of polls maintained by 538 and by Real Clear Politics, he's still a little higher than that, around 40%. But it seems to be going in the wrong direction, Julie. I mean, you would think that as inflation gets down to the 3% range, and let's not forget about gasoline prices, all the way down to around $3 a gallon and probably going lower. I mean, those are all going the right direction for President Biden. And I think the sort of main narrative here is that inflation is just becoming less and less of a story, and there is every reason to think that will continue. So you'd think that this would be.
I wonder why inflation is becoming less and less of a story. Maybe the mainstream media is deciding to not cover it. Maybe the media is deciding to cover other things, like Trump civil court cases, like Trump defamation cases. Now, the funny part, the ironic part is that this is a consumer economy. And as much as the Democrats apparently don't want Trump to win the presidency, what they're doing by constantly telling us what Trump's doing, what Trump's selling, sneakers, apparently. They sold out. He's selling merch. What Trump's said every day. They don't seem to understand that the economy that they built themselves, a consumerist economy, where exorbitant amounts of publicity is good publicity. It's called advertising. It's called marketing. And you guys are literally taking the guy who you say is an existential threat, and you're telling me that, oh, Trump's selling sneakers. Well, now his sneakers are sold out. Oh, Trump's doing all this. Now his fucking rally's full. You guys are going around like morons in your own consumerist capitalist economy. And it seems like y'all don't know the rules. It seems like y'all don't know that the more you talk about this existential threat, the more popular it gets. Because that's literally the society you created, you idiots. You fucking morons. Remember when you usurped the reins of government from the power? You tried to distract us from the fact that we no longer had liberty. We traded it for security. So you got us to buy and consume things and to enter into massive amounts of deficits like you do. Yeah, well, in doing that, guys, you created a cultural trend in our country where the more we hear about something, the more we want something. So don't you guys know that every time you mention Trump and his defamation suits and his fucking court cases, the more we kind of want him a little bit. And every time we see Joe Biden talking about how he's going to cancel student loans and not cancel student loans, but can contribute massive billions of amounts of money to Volodymyr Zelensky and the Ukraine relief, the more we want Donald Trump. Because he's the only one saying that you guys are fucking nuts. He's nuts too, but y'all are nuts. Y'all are nuts on nuts. Nuts on nuts, bro. In any case, guys, that's what I was reflecting on with President's Day. It's the fact that we're doomed. But the good news is I'm not the only one who really thinks that the United States of America is in decline. Our empire is falling, such as Rome fell, in the same exact ways, and probably in the same time divide, just like Rome did. The Byzantine Empire and Holy Roman Empire. Yeah. But I wasn't the first one who thought that. I can't take the credit because I'm free thinking, innovative, and open minded. There were others like me that were free thinking, innovative, and open minded. They we thought the same thing.
For
bro.
those who predict the American
very interesting.
experiment can't last and who worry the social fabric is disintegrating at a time of rising political division, it's worth remembering that back when the ink had barely dried on the Constitution, the Founding Fathers were deeply pessimistic about the future of the country they had created. Hamilton called the Constitution a frail and worthless fabric. Washington lamented the growth of political factions. Adams thought a lack of civic virtue doomed the republic. Jefferson watched sectional divisions between North and South with horror, calling the sacrifices made by the generation of 76 useless because it would be thrown away by the unwise and unworthy passions of their sons.
Damn,
My only
nailed it.
consolation, he wrote, is to be that I live not to weep over it.
Yeah, you're
Their
lucky you didn't fucking live
pronouncements
through this
seem
shit, bro.
almost histrionic
Joe Biden
to the modern ear.
In Fears of a Setting Sun, Syracuse University professor Dennis Rasmussen wrestles with the founders' near universal pessimism about the future of the country they created.
Partly, I think that's because they thought that so much was at stake. They really thought that the future of Republican government and the future of human liberty was riding on this American experiment. And so the potential failure of that experiment they thought would be a world historical calamity. I mean, they did have really grandiose hopes. You read what they write and they really think they're coming up with a new system that's going to secure liberty for the future that had never been done before. They're worried that what they think is this world historical achievement is going to fail. It's not just Washington, Hamilton, Adams, and Jefferson. Virtually all of the founders who lived into the 19th century became disillusioned.
It's a republic if you can keep it, Benjamin Franklin said. You know, Abraham Lincoln, one of the first Republicans, he said in Gettysburg Address, sobering thoughts about you and I know and believe that life is so dear and peace so sweet as to be purchased at the price of chains and slavery. If nothing in life is worth dying for, when did this begin? Just in the face of this enemy? Or should Moses have told the children of Israel to live in slavery under the pharaohs? Should the patriots at Concord Bridge have thrown down their guns and refused to fire the shot heard round the world? Freedom is worth every cost to those people. And they wanted to protect it at any cost. They could have. It was dear, sweet, priceless. It was a republic if we could keep it. And it, in a constitutional documentation context, I guess, is socially, it's not, economically not, principally not, but we could turn it all around. And that's really what the Constitution shows with their logistics, that it's a living document and can be amended. And rights can be wronged. Slaves can be freed. We can turn it all around, guys, with the power of our patriotism. That's real patriotism, guys, is the willingness to amend the folly. It's a time to choose, guys. And our choices are very clear. We have a choice to decline or to grow. We have a choice to indulge in evil, whether it be the lesser of or the greater. Or we have the choice to enable a path of enlightenment that might point us towards good. We have a chance to protest or to pray. We have a chance to make our voices heard in the ways that we still can until we can't. Until then, be free-thinking, innovative, open-minded. Catch Tommy Nation Politics, Progressive, Independent Media tonight, 8 p.m. Central Standard Time. I'll have an interview coming out. It'll be streaming. We'll get some more insight. We'll talk to some more people. We'll have some more arguments until my constitution is resolved. Tommy Politics.